There comes a moment in every man's life when silence becomes unbearable. Not the silence of a quiet room, but the silence between who he pretends to be and who he truly is. You feel it, don't you? That subtle tug, as if something deep inside is whispering, "This isn't all there is." And in that moment, every man must decide what he really believes. Will he keep believing in what he sees, in what the world shows him, or will he finally believe in what he knows within? Most never make that choice. They live and die on the surface of things, hypnotized by appearances, chasing reflections of their own doubt. They run after money, success, validation, but never stop long enough to ask, who is the one chasing? They chase the world outside while remaining blind to the one within, and because they chase, they affirm separation. Every pursuit becomes a silent confession that says, "I don't have it yet." But a few, a rare few, awaken. They stop running and start remembering. They remember what has been whispered since the beginning of time, that the outer world is only the echo, and the cause lives within. It is not the economy that makes a man poor. It is not opportunity that makes a man rich. It is consciousness, and consciousness alone, that shapes all form. Neville Goddard once said, "You are God imagining." Simple words, yet they hold the entire blueprint of reality. Because if you are the imaginer, then everything you experience must be your imagination pushed out. The world has trained you to believe in effort, in statistics, in waiting your turn. But there is another current running beneath all of that. It's the current of assumption, the sacred knowing that what you feel to be true within yourself must take form without. That's the forgotten secret of the ancients. The Egyptian priests, the mystics of the East, the prophets of the West, all taught the same thing in different words. Creation begins and ends within man. You may look around and see people working harder than ever, yet feeling emptier than ever. They build empires of activity, but foundations of doubt. They talk about faith while still worshiping evidence. And as long as you serve evidence, you are its slave. To believe only what you see is to live in the echo. To believe what you know within is to become the cause. That is where true power begins. Not in the struggle to make something happen, but in the stillness that remembers it already has. So let me ask you something personal. What would change in your life if you actually believed that you were the cause? That everything responding to you right now is simply your inner state dressed as circumstance? Would you still chase? Would you still wait for permission? Or would you finally rest in knowing that you are already the source of everything you seek? Because there's a difference between saying, "I want to be wealthy," and knowing, "I am the consciousness of wealth." The first is a prayer of distance. The second is the language of creation. You see, every desire you hold is not a signal of lack. It's an invitation to remember who you already are. Desire is divine memory trying to awaken within you. It's life saying, "This is already yours, if only you would remember." That is the moment where belief must shift from the mind to the being. And that shift, from seeing to knowing, from wanting to being, changes everything. Neville learned this truth not through theory, but through experience. He told the story many times, but most never hear it deeply enough to understand. When he longed to return home to Barbados, he had no visible means to do it. No money, no ticket, no opportunity, only a desire and a teacher named Abdullah who refused to let him doubt. Abdullah didn't say, "Work harder." He didn't say, "Maybe one day." He looked at Neville and said simply, "You are already in Barbados." And that single statement carried the entire law within it. Neville left confused, as most of us would. How could he already be there when every sense contradicted it? But Abdullah didn't teach from reason. He taught from law. He understood that the moment you assume a state and remain faithful to it, the outer world must conform. So Neville obeyed. He began to imagine himself there. He felt the Caribbean breeze against his face. He heard the laughter of his family. He walked through familiar streets in his imagination as though it were already done. And then, slowly, the invisible began to rearrange itself. A letter arrived, a passage opened, and soon Neville was on a ship sailing home. No coincidence, no miracle, just law, the law of assumption, alive and active. What Abdullah revealed to Neville wasn't magic, it was identity. He taught him to stop identifying as the man who wants and become the man who already is. Because when you stand in that state long enough, everything around you bends to reflect it. That's the same law at work in your life right now, whether you're conscious of it or not. What you habitually assume, you inevitably experience. The outer is always just the echo. And that is why in a moment I'm going to give you a single sentence, a command, that will awaken this same power within you. Not as superstition, not as luck, but as law. Because the universe doesn't respond to wishful words, it mirrors your inner stance. And when you declare from that stance, from the identity of wealth itself, something extraordinary begins to happen. But before we reveal that sentence, I want you to really understand what's about to take place. You are not about to ask for wealth. You are about to remember it. You're not trying to pull something from the outside. You are about to uncover what has been within you all along. That's why this moment matters. Because the instant you speak it from belief, the old self starts to dissolve. The one that chases, doubts, and fears. And what emerges is the true self. The source, the cause, the imaginer. That is where the next part begins, where the command is finally revealed. But before we get there, take a breath. Let your mind grow still. Because what comes next is not just an affirmation, it's remembrance. It's the moment when words stop being words and start being law. And the sentence is this: I am wealth in human form, and money is drawn to my presence. You don't whisper those words as a beggar hoping to be heard. You declare them as a creator remembering his own reflection. You speak it once because truth requires no repetition. You speak it once because what you're affirming is already finished. Let those words settle for a moment, not in your mind, in your being. Say them slowly, not as a mantra, but as a decree. I am wealth in human form, and money is drawn to my presence. You see, this isn't poetry, it's physics. Everything in the universe moves by resonance. What you embody, you attract. What you declare from identity, you magnetize. Money doesn't hear your need, it feels your state. When you chase it, it hides. When you become it, it follows. Most people speak of abundance while vibrating with lack. They say, I am abundant, but their tone still trembles with worry. They affirm wealth in the morning and check the bills by evening. They're praying to the divine instead of from it. But when you stand in these words, when you feel them as law, something shifts. You begin to sense that wealth isn't a number. It's a nature. It's not something you earn or find. It's what you express. That's why this single declaration carries such power. It moves your awareness from separation to unity, from I need to, I am. And that movement changes everything. Because money, success, and opportunity are only shadows of your inner conviction. Stop chasing the shadow. Become the light. When you realize that you are wealth in form, money becomes an echo of that realization. Think of the sun. It doesn't chase light. It is light. And by simply being itself, it illuminates everything around it. That's what these words do. They turn your awareness from seeking to shining. When you say, I am wealth in human form, you awaken the original rhythm of creation within you. It's not the sound that changes the world. It's the state from which it's spoken. If you speak from fear, you confirm lack. If you speak from faith, you ignite abundance. Abdullah once told Neville, remain there. Remain in the state of the wish fulfilled. Remain in the feeling of already having. That is the hidden key. You don't repeat the sentence 100 times to convince the universe. You speak it once, and then you remain there, as if life had already delivered. You let the inner atmosphere of wealth become so real that it colors every breath. You carry yourself as though the account were already full, the freedom already felt. That is faith. Faith is not hoping something will happen. Faith is knowing it already has, unseen but inevitable. The moment you stand in that knowing, the world rearranges, not through struggle, but by law. Ideas appear, people cross your path, opportunities emerge from directions you never planned. Why? Because your inner state is a command signal to reality. The subconscious translates vibration into circumstance. It's not mystical, it's mechanical. You could almost imagine the universe as a vast mirror that doesn't understand words, only identity. When you say, "I am wealth in human form," you stop asking the mirror to show you proof. You simply become the reflection you wish to see. Now, this is where most people fail. They speak the truth, but stand in doubt. They affirm abundance, then glance around nervously to see if anything's changing. That's like planting a seed and digging it up every hour to check if it's growing. You don't test the law, you trust it. The law cannot fail. Only our belief in it does. And every time you return to that state of certainty, the invisible starts to move. So, when you speak this command, speak it once and stand firm. Don't check your bank account for validation. Check your consciousness. Because wealth doesn't flow to the anxious. It flows through the aligned. If you can feel the difference between wanting and being, you're already halfway there. Wanting is tension. Being is peace. And peace is the frequency of power. When you live from that peace, the world starts to move around you differently. People sense it, not because of what you say, but because of what you radiate. You carry an energy that says, "I am complete," and completion draws completion. Remember, Abdullah slammed the door on Neville once. Neville came to him worried, saying, "Nothing's happening." Abdullah didn't argue. He didn't console. He said, "You are already there," and shut the door. That wasn't anger. It was mastery. Because faith demands stability. It doesn't negotiate with the senses. It doesn't beg for signs. It stands as truth until reality bends to match it. So the next time your mind whispers, "It's not working," stand firm and answer, "It's already done." The next time fear says, "Be realistic," reply, "Reality bends to me." That's the discipline of creation, to remain there, to live from the end while the middle unfolds in its perfect order. And if this message is resonating with you so far, if you can feel something stirring inside you, take a second to subscribe and stay connected. Because everything we explore here will train your mind to remember who you are. Not a seeker of wealth, but the very embodiment of it. Now, back to the teaching. When Abdullah said, "Remain there," he was giving Neville the discipline of kings. To remain means you stop negotiating with the senses. You no longer argue with what is. You rest in what's true, and in that rest, everything moves for you. The more you remain, the faster things shift. Because faith that waits is not faith. It's delay disguised as patience. Real faith assumes completion now. And that assumption, held long enough, becomes fact. Every word spoken with belief sets the universe in motion. That's why you must guard your inner speech carefully. Never curse your life with phrases of lack. Never talk about what you can't afford or what's missing. Each word is a seed, and the soil of your mind never says no. Speak only what you wish to multiply. Imagine only what you wish to experience. Because imagination is not make-believe. It is God in action. So as you move through this day, hold that knowing quietly within you. You are wealth in human form. You don't chase money. It recognizes you. You don't beg the universe. You remind it of what you already are. That remembrance is creation itself. And from this point forward, life will start to answer you differently. Not because it's changed, but because you have. Every moment you breathe, you are assuming something. You're assuming who you are, what life is, and how much you deserve. And every one of those assumptions quietly molds your reality. You don't have to perform rituals or chase methods. You only have to notice the state you're living from. Because everything you call my life is simply your state made visible. Think about it. When you feel confident, the world reflects confidence back to you. When you feel small, everything around you seems to shrink. When you feel abundant, opportunities seem to multiply from nowhere. It's not magic, it's matching. The outer world is a mirror waiting for your decision about who you are. This is why Abdullah's teaching was so radical. He didn't tell Neville to fix his circumstances. He told him to fix his state. Because once the state changes, the story must follow. You can't keep imagining yourself as the struggler and expect to see the flow of a master. You can't repeat affirmations of abundance while still identifying as someone trying to get there. That's like painting over a cracked wall. The surface may look new for a moment, but the foundation remains the same. So, before you try to manifest anything, stop and ask, from which self am I speaking? The one who's chasing or the one who already has? The world is obsessed with doing, but the mystic knows the true doing is inner. Every external act is just the echo of an internal decision. When you start from identity, everything you do becomes charged with power. When you start from lack, even your effort becomes resistance. This is why the masters move differently. They act without hurry. They walk through life as if the finish line has already been crossed, because for them, it has. And that calm certainty is magnetic. It draws people, resources, and ideas without strain. You can feel it in their presence. There's no desperation, no need to prove. Only quiet authority. That's the same presence you awaken when you live from your command. I am wealth in human form, and money is drawn to my presence. It's not arrogance. It's divine memory. It's remembering that the universe can only mirror the image you hold of yourself. So the real work is not to attract, but to return. To return to the state that's already whole, already abundant, already done. Now, I want you to think about something subtle. Each time you shift from fear back into faith, you're not starting over. You're accelerating alignment. You're proving to your subconscious that truth holds more weight than appearances. That's the discipline of masters. They don't stay perfect. They return faster. The moment fear knocks, they answer with awareness. The moment doubt appears, they breathe and remember, I am wealth in human form. And in that instant, the energy stabilizes again. You can practice this right now. Notice whatever situation feels uncertain in your life. Maybe it's money, health, or a relationship. Don't resist it. Just breathe and shift identity. Say inwardly, I am the cause here. I am the source. And feel the air around you change as though reality itself pauses to listen. That pause, that stillness, is the power returning to you. When you train yourself to hold that state, even briefly, the outer world starts to bend. It's not about forcing results. It's about returning to remembrance faster than you fall into fear. That's resilience in its truest form. And when you master that, you'll notice something extraordinary. Life begins to move in rhythm with you. The delays shrink. The chaos softens. You stop reacting and start radiating. That's when you know you're no longer chasing results. You're shaping reality from the inside out. If this truth resonates with you, if it's awakening that inner calm that says, I've always known this, then subscribe now and stay close to this channel. Not because you need motivation, but because you've chosen mastery. Here, every word, every story, every lesson is designed to keep you in remembrance, to help you return to that state faster every time the world tries to shake you. Now listen carefully, because this next insight is crucial. The universe does not respond to emotion. It responds to conviction. You can cry in gratitude or shout in frustration, but it's the feeling of finality, the quiet knowing of it is done, that moves mountains. Faith that waits is not faith. Faith that assumes is creation. You are not meant to wait for signs. You are meant to embody them. When you feel it done, you release the desire to control. You stop counting hours, watching numbers, checking outcomes, because the true creator knows that every unseen arrangement is already underway. Your task is not to make things happen. Your task is to maintain the inner tone of completion. That's what Abdullah meant when he said, remain there. Remain in the tone of wealth. Remain in the certainty of abundance. Remain until it feels normal. Because when it feels normal, the world must mirror it. The law has no favorites. It simply obeys identity. That's why even people unaware of this principle still create by it. Unconsciously, by habit, by speech, by emotional repetition. But once you become conscious, you can direct it deliberately. That's where life begins to feel like flow instead of fight. And that's where we're heading next. In the next part, we'll talk about how gratitude seals this state. How giving thanks before you see results tells the universe, I already have it. Because gratitude is the bridge between faith and physical form. But before we cross that bridge, remember this truth tonight. You are not becoming wealthy. You're remembering wealth. You're not calling abundance. You're revealing it. Every time you say the command with feeling, you remind the universe of what it already knows. Remain there. And watch how reality rearranges itself around you. When you begin to live from the state of the wish fulfilled, something beautiful happens. Life starts moving in ways that feel effortless, yet perfectly timed. You may call it luck. You may call it coincidence. But those who understand the law know it as the bridge of incidents. The bridge isn't something you build. It's something that unfolds under your feet the moment you assume the end. It's the invisible choreography of life rearranging itself to honor your conviction. One day, you'll look back and realize every delay had a purpose. Every detour was divine direction. Every closed door protected the timing of your manifestation. That's the power of living from the end. Everything begins serving you, even what once seemed against you. And this is where gratitude becomes the seal of creation. You see, gratitude isn't a polite thank you after the blessing arrives. It's the vibration that proves belief. When you give thanks before the evidence appears, you're declaring, it's already mine. That feeling of quiet gratitude, that unshakable peace, is what bends reality around you. Abdullah lived this truth. He thanked God before any visible result. He was never caught praying for something. He lived from it. And because of that, the law never failed him. The law never fails. Only our belief in it does. So, practice this tonight. Before you sleep, close your eyes and say softly, thank you for the wealth already mine. Feel it, not as hope, but as recognition. See yourself already surrounded by what you once desired. Hear the sounds of that fulfilled life, the laughter, the freedom, the calm. Let your imagination be the bridge that carries you there, because the moment you can feel gratitude for the unseen starts arranging itself to be seen. That is how spirit turns into matter, through the vibration of completion. And the most powerful part? You don't have to know how. You only need to remain faithful to the end. Your only work is to hold the state. The rest, the calls, the opportunities, the chance encounters, is handled by the unseen. This is why Neville called it the bridge. He said it happens naturally, through ordinary events that seem perfectly logical in hindsight, yet were invisibly guided by your assumption. Maybe someone you haven't spoken to in years suddenly messages you. Maybe an idea strikes you while you're walking, and that idea changes everything. Maybe an unexpected opportunity appears that feels almost too precise to be random. That's the bridge in motion. And your only task is to walk it in faith. You don't need to push. You don't need to force. You don't need to manipulate outcomes. You only need to remember, it's already done. Now, as we move into the final part, you'll see why gratitude is not the end of the journey. It's the beginning of embodiment. Because once you live from completion, Wealth no longer feels like something coming to you. It feels like something flowing through you. You stop asking, when will it come? And you start asking, who must I be to express it? That question changes everything, because it transforms you from seeker to source, from dreamer to divine. And that is where your true power begins. Not in receiving wealth, but in becoming it. When you finally realize that wealth is not something you find, but something you are, the chase ends. And in that ending, a new life begins. You stop praying as if heaven were elsewhere. You stop waiting for signs, miracles, and proof. You simply live from knowing, I am wealth in human form, and money is drawn to my presence. It's no longer a phrase you repeat. It's an identity you wear. It's a quiet power that walks before you, opens doors, and attracts circumstances aligned with your certainty. Money, opportunities, and resources begin to gather, not because you chase them, but because they recognize their source. If this message has awakened something in you, if you feel that calm fire rising inside, that quiet yes in your heart, then type in the comments below, I am wealth in human form. That act isn't for me, it's for you. It anchors this truth into your subconscious mind. It tells your inner world, this is who I am now. And once that identity is sealed within, life must conform without. Remember, repetition isn't for convincing the universe. It's for convincing you. That's why you should come back to this message often, not as a ritual, but as remembrance. Each time you listen, the truth sinks deeper. Each time you hear it, the noise of doubt grows quieter, until eventually there is only silence, and in that silence, creation itself. Because you are not just a person trying to manifest. You are consciousness imagining reality into form. You are the divine, expressing itself as abundance, as wealth, as freedom. And when you walk in that knowing, every step becomes sacred. So tonight, rest in peace. Not the peace of waiting, but the peace of completion. Sleep in the assurance that all is already arranged in your favor. And when you wake, walk as one who already has what he once desired. Because you do. You are wealth in human form. Money is drawn to your presence. And nothing, no circumstance, no delay, no appearance, can ever contradict what is already true. I hope you enjoyed this video. See you in the next one.